Today we're going to make a traditional Eastern European soup called borscht, but we're going to split this into two segments because before we make the soup, we're going to make the stock, and I think that that's an important step that I wanted to show. So we're going to highlight the stock in this first portion and move on to the soup in the second portion. So for the stock, in here I've got roughly 2 pounds of chicken feet thawed and covered with water, and that's going to be the base of our stock. To add to, we've got rosemary, carrots, bay leaf, celery, fennel, onion, thyme, and sage, and then we're going to throw in a little bit of coriander and black pepper as well. So to start, we want to get our chicken feet on the oven or on the stove, and we're going to bring that to a hard boil and let it boil for about 5 minutes. While it's doing that, we're going to take and prep our other ingredients. We're going to quarter the onion, quarter the fennel, and then we're just going to break the carrots and celery down into a little bit smaller pieces. After we let our chicken feet boil for 5 minutes, we're going to remove them, drain all the liquid, and then I like to plunge them in an ice bath. This isn't a necessary step, but it cools them down a little bit quicker so you can work with them earlier. So this is what they look like. What we're going to do now is go through and remove all of the nails. They have this pad on their feet here. If there's any sort of hard buildups there or some discoloration, we're going to remove that too. And then we're going to put them back into our original pot. So when we're cleaning these, we want to use a big knife, and cutting through this joint can be a little bit difficult. I've found that if you cut near the attachment of the talon, it's easier. As you get further down on the toe area, you start cutting into bone, and it's much harder to cut through the bone than it is to cut through at the little attachment. So once we have them cleaned up, they're going to go back in the pot. So I'm going to switch off, clean the rest of these up, and then we'll move on to our next step. Once we get our feet cleaned up, we're going to add the rest of our ingredients and enough water to cover everything by about 1 inch. Now, obviously I'm running out of room in my pot here, so that's not quite possible, but we want to make sure we have enough water to cover everything so we're not just going to start cooking it and burning it. Now we're going to get it on the stove. We're going to get it back up to a boil, and then once we get that boil, we're going to turn it down to a very low simmer, partially cover it, and then we're going to let that cook down for 3 to 4 hours. After 3.5 hours, we gave our stock a little taste and it was good to go. So at that point, all we have to do is strain out the solids. We're going to keep about 8 cups out for our soup, but the rest of it can get put in a jar. It's important to realize that this particular stock has a lot of collagen in it, which means that as the temperature starts to lower, whether it's sitting on the counter or in the fridge, it's going to congeal and form a jelly-like texture. And that's nothing to be worried about. It's completely normal. It's a side effect of the collagen. So just be aware that when you use it in your soup or heat it back up, you'll get a liquid texture or a liquid consistency. So now we have our own homemade stock to use in a variety of cooking.